the long-range facility plan, the section over the gym, they had that in the long-range facility plan. When we surveyed it with thermal imaging, that was perfect. There's only one or two little small wet spots that we could repair. So this section here is not even in the 5-year plan, which is good. So 23, I'm sorry, will be the blue section. 24 will be the section here. And that goes all the way to the back, to the front, basically, of the high school, that section there. And then D is actually the elementary school roof. That'll be the last year of the 5-year plans, 21, 22, 23, 24. This will be 25. So that'll take care of it. And if you looked, you were looking at, I got approximate prices on like section B. This section here was like 240,000. And section C was 169,000. And section G was about 121,000 projected. And like I said, if you look at long-range facility plans, we're talking over probably $3 million if you look by their numbers. And we're going to be doing it for a lot less than that. So I think it's a definite thing that we need. I think we have to address it because, number one, we don't want mold issues. And so I think that's real critical, especially when we'll talk about indoor air quality and so forth. Last thing we want to do is have any unnecessary water coming into the building. We've done a lot to improve indoor air quality. We purchased ionization units that are going to go into air handling units. We're going to be putting them in. That'll increase the quality of the air and so forth as far as any kind of bacteria and so forth, COVID and so forth. So we'll be doing that. And then also going into that, on that same topic, if you see under exhaust replacement, on the roof, I said just estimate probably about 20 exhaust fans. If you ever go to a restaurant, you see the big aluminum fans on the roof? Kind of figure like 20 of them, different sizes on the roof, to evacuate air from the plenums of the school. Exhaust air. We have 2 on the top of the penthouse for the main air handlers up there. What it does, the return air comes into the penthouse, these exhaust fans take it out. Most of these fans are way past their life expectancy. So to improve the air quality, I'm pushing to see if we can't have that system replaced, all those fans. Again, it's an indoor air quality issue. I think it's a big concern. And I think it's well worth investing money into it. And again, it's not a short term. Once they're maintained and so forth, to last for years and years. But I really think it's very important that we do that for the indoor air quality and the health and safety of all involved. On the elevator, they had it in the plan, poor rating to replace it. In my years here, the biggest problem I see coming up is a lot of control. The controls are getting old, they're antiquated. So for about $15,000, I think we could at least get the controls in the car and so forth updated, so we could get a few more years out of the elevator. I think we have bigger fish to fry than replacing the elevator right now, because you're probably, I don't even want to fathom what it's going to cost to do the elevator, because I'm sure they're going to have to make a bigger shaft and everything to probably come up with different codes now. There's a couple small items. I'm going to leave the big one to last. Exterior doors. Again, a lot of doors we have are, it's not so much, they're not thermal as far as efficiency, but also the panic hardware and so forth, the way they're constructed, they're no longer working properly. There's a safety issue as far as getting out and locking up and so forth. So I got a couple of doors I want to replace. And then the big one, as you all know, it seems like we're getting a lot more natural disasters, natural storms and so forth. In Sandy, when we had Sandy a few years back, we were blessed enough to have the power come back soon enough that we didn't freeze. If we lose our power in the school, we only have a small generator just to get us out. That's all it is. It's an evacuation generator. Powers a few lights. If we have a long-range power outage, especially in the wintertime, that's my biggest concern, we're going to freeze the school up. And you're talking millions of dollars of damage. And you're talking being out of school for God only knows how long. So I'm really pushing. I've looked for grants. with the emergency management and so forth over the last like 5 or 6 years. I tried to go the route of the evacuation center, and Goodwill Fire Department has a generator down there, and they're I guess, listed as the evacuation center. So we don't qualify for one through the emergency management at this point. But my concern too is if we have a major flood, guess what? You're not going to get to the firehouse either. So if we put an emergency generator in there, God forbid, we could just also use a school for emergency evacuation location maybe down the road if we had to.
Jim, take a stab at what the cost of that would be.
The generator, I think this is a fairly realistic number because I looked into it a few years ago.
Right?
You're talking about $458,000.
Okay. Thank you.
And you have to understand, unfortunately, the way the school was built, in a new building, new construction, they'd have the panels distributed. It's okay, this is for heating, this is for lighting, they'll have it broken down. Unfortunately, I might have the blowers on one panel, okay? I have pumps that run to circulate the water on another panel, and I got an air handler, one here, one there. So I just can't just have a smaller generator just to run the heat and a few lights. I gotta have one big enough that we can power the school. Not that we have to have everything on, but I gotta make sure I have power at every point within this district, every building, Oxford Street, high school, penthouse, basement, because I have all types of utilities I have to, cover. So again, not that we have to have everything on the school, but I have to have power to all the panels so I can distribute my power as needed to keep the heating system up and water and so forth. Another item we had on there, and again, this is just something, I know we struggle with finances and so forth, so I try to watch my P's and Q's, but like the hot water tank in the boiler room, okay, they're inspected every year. The hot water heater is inspected every year and so forth, boilers are inspected every year. But again, it's past its life expectancy. It's in the boiler room where we have our main electric. Now, is it going to Belvidere? No. Is it leaking right now? No. But I can't guarantee when it's going to ever start leaking because of its age. So I don't think it's something we have to worry about this year, but I think we need to keep a close look on it. And the problem with it, this whole situation too, is when they built the school, they have this tank that's probably 12 foot high, 6 foot in diameter in the back of the boiler room. Well, the only way it's coming out is if you cut it apart. That's the only way you're going to get it out, so it's going to cost more for demo and so forth. And then when they go to put something back in, it's going to be probably smaller units that are like 5 foot tall by 3 foot. It'll be multiple tanks.
What's a rough estimate for that cost?
That one, we were looking,
That's on page 10.
Yeah.
Page 10?
That's on the roadmap on page 10 where it gives you the remaining life in red. It's near the top quarter of the page. You see it listed up there twice. I guess there's two different ones.
Yeah, there's the heater, there's also the tank. See here. Gas-fired hot water heater, 300 gallon, that's the heater itself. But there's no price there, but that was, life expectancy was 2016. Now, we have done some maintenance work to it and so forth, replacing the pile controls and stuff like that. But again, it's getting up in years. The tank is the same era. I'm trying to find the tank here.
Very top.
Yeah, but there's no
boiling
dollar with it.
hot water, yeah. Again, that's
Yeah, it's
1991.
not
So again, that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. I don't think we do have to worry about it this year, but it's just something we need to, keep in the sight, our line of sight in the future. So I don't want to come here next year and say, oh, we didn't know about it. If God forbid we need to do something. Let's say indoor air quality, exterior doors, heaters. All right, as far as Oxford Street, is just a couple doors. The 3rd Street School, the fire alarm is obsolete. You can't get parts for it. Right now, we're only using minimal, so that's fine. But if it goes down, if we decide to ever use that again for students and it goes down, the only way we can keep students in there, I believe, and I'm not even sure if they'll allow that anymore, is we had a 24-hour watch or fire watch during the day. they might allow us to do that for a day or two, but they're not gonna let us do it for a long period of time. So if we are ever thinking about opening that back up for student or occupancy, that's definitely an issue. And I got prices, and it's really not that bad. It's probably about $15,500, $15,348 to put a new system in. So it's really not that bad of an investment as far as replace an obsolete system. And on the same thing, if we decide to ever use that again for a school, the playground set, I think original is over 30 years old. It doesn't meet today's standards. I have it inspected every year by a playground certified inspector, but it's getting to the point where we're putting good money into bad money. It doesn't, the gaps and the bars and so forth, it's kind of like the cribs. When I was growing up, cribs were nothing. Today, you buy a crib 3 years later, it doesn't meet safety standards anymore, or car seats. They always raise the standards. With this playground set down there, the gaps and so forth are too large, so it's actually a safety issue. We should probably, if we're thinking about doing anything, look into replacing that. They'd also recommend taking the swings down and putting lower swings and so forth for safety. There's a lot of safety issues down there. Whether or not we could get the town to go in with us, I don't know. But I know that usually late December, early in the year, there is a lot of sales on play sets. So it's something we could look into if you're interested. That was pretty much, like I said, I could make a wish list a mile long. But these are a couple things that I think are really very vital and critical that we need to address for the health and safety of students. I wanted to, just to one point, I know fields are a big topic. When Dirk Swaneveld, who remembers Dirk Swaneveld was principal, superintendent, we started aerating the fields. We actually split-seeded it one year, and then we were able to find Dirk found an old aerator. We had the FFA clean it up and paint it up. And we've been every year aerating and seeding and fertilizing the fields. So we're investing approximately $12,000 a year into the athletic fields, which is really nothing. And are they an AstroTurf field? No. But I know I can honestly say with no remorse that the fields are a heck of a lot better than they ever were before we started seeding them and split seeding them. And again, like this fall, we always take the baseball fields, we aerate them, we got a rototiller. We've been able to buy some equipment over the last few years that really makes our job a lot better. We bought a rototiller. We rototilled the fields up in the fall, the baseball and the softball fields, let them heave through the winter time. When spring comes, we're able to level them out once it dries out. And we try to stay ahead of the game. The one thing, and I'm going to bring it up just so, in the spring or in the fall, this fall, with all the rain, there was times when we couldn't hardly get to the grass because if we would have gone on the mower, we would have rutted it. So sometimes, it's not lack of want to get the fields ready, but the climate, the conditions of the fields, the wet, the rain, several inches of rain at a time, we couldn't get on the field. We would have done more damage trying to cut it than if we would have left it alone. And it's frustrating for us because I know the kids want the fields perfect, and we want the fields perfect. But sometimes we just can't do it because of the weather. I mean, I got a great crew, and they do what they can, but sometimes you can't pull a rabbit out of your hat sometimes. So that's pretty much my presentation. If anybody has any questions or ideas.
Tim, I have heard that there are drainage issues on part of the field. Is that true?
The varsity soccer field, if you're closest to the school, that corner, there's wet spots there. When we actually put the track in with the town and so forth, cooperation of town, we had dug additional trenches and so forth. If you go out on the fields, you'll see like little bare spots where gravel is. There's piping under there to alleviate the water. We ran a few additional pipes from the fields and so forth for that area. It's better. Is it perfect? No. The JV softball field, it's better than it was 10 years ago, but unfortunately, with that hillside above it, when you get heavy rains, it all comes down to the JV field, and it gets really mushy, especially along the first baseline. It's better than it used to be, but it's not perfect. I know when they built the football field, or actually it's the practice football field now, but when they built that field up there, it's solid limestone underneath it. And so drainage is really poor. If you go behind the football bleachers. We get heavy rains, it's soppy back there, it's wet. So there is some drainage issue problems, yes. Not so much on the football, not on the field hockey field, but when you get to the soccer field, and basically, well, and even the softball fields and so forth, we get heavy rains, you get some ponding if you get really, really heavy, but that's usually just on the infield section. So, yeah, there is some issues, not as bad as they were, but is it perfect? No.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jim? No? Thank you very much, Jim.
All right, thank you, have a good night.
Excellent, excellent job.
Thanks, Jim.
I don't know if we want to have a further discussion as to some level of priority, or if we want to kind of digest a lot of that. You know, when we met with finance last Thursday, we did talk about more of a full board discussion as to what the direction we want to go in as far as this plan. I think many of us agree that the numbers that were in the plan itself are extremely inflated.
Yes.
You know, I think Jimmy just gave Mr. Beck just gave a couple of good examples of some of those. So Shelley and I were, and we discussed with finance just a little bit of a roadmap of our own and where we wanted to start to spend some money as we start to look into the facilities. So it doesn't have to be this very second. We're not saying that by any means. But as Mr. Barrick did mention, it is something we want to be on top of, especially we are going to try to do some projects either later this school year or into the summer, because it is material issues, it is bidding issues, and just things that we don't want to be sitting here in April trying to get something done this summer. We'll never get it done. It would be for the next summer.
What does everybody think? We can send it back to committee for the next committee meeting and then have another discussion when we come back to our next board meeting as a group? Take some time and digest what we just heard?
Yeah,
Yes?
I guess, but we should, like you said, we should act on it soon, so.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, whatever, for the safety, everything that's listed here, it's important stuff, so it makes sense to go in that direction, I would say. The only question I have is the demolition of the press box. What would be putting a new one in with that demolition, or is that just scratching altogether? That would be my only question on this.
For now, it's just to take it out.
Okay.
Yes, there are some important issues here that require our action. So, he who waits is lost.
So are we sending it back to committee and then talking about it again at our next meeting?
Just one question on Third Street School. I mean, what will be the overall cost for us to bring that school back up to code to actually start teaching kids in it again? I mean, does it make sense to keep on putting money into that school at this point?
I'll speak. I think that was a question that came up in the finance committee, Mr. White. Almost verbatim as to how you just asked the question. So, right, I mean, obviously, just listening to Mr. Beck's presentation, we know we'd be on the hook for at least $15,000 just to get the fire alarm system up. Above and beyond that's probably not a tremendous amount of cost. If we were to reopen it, and we have discussed that a little bit internally as far as a preschool, if we do open that third preschool classroom next year, that we would move the preschool to 3rd Street and have the 3 classes there. So the good news is we would be getting some money from the state to open those classrooms. So I would suggest it probably wouldn't be a huge out-of-pocket cost for us to move the students back in there. But you could also argue that there's probably some savings to be had by moving us out of that building as well. You know, and Shelley can put that together exactly how much we spend on electric and internet and things like that.
I think just in terms of getting that school compliant with ADA, doing some of the stuff that would need to be done, I mean, there is no handicap accessible, there is no security, the school lacks pretty much everything that's required for most modern schools. I mean, just given the cost of doing all of that stuff, does it really make sense to keep holding on to that school?
Right. Yeah, that's a question I think we need to discuss and decide in finance committee.
Sure, thank you.
But we did discuss it, we sort of discussed it in finance committee and said, you know what, the full board needs to actually have a discussion on that to see what direction they want the finance committee to go.
Yeah.
I have to agree with Andy. I actually brought it up in the finance committee, and I think, Doug, you brought up, maybe we even just get a real estate to give us an idea of what that building is worth if we were to get rid of it. No, I'm not saying we're gonna sell it, but let's find out if we chose to do that, what option do we have if we wanna go that direction? And maybe we get Jim to tell us what it's gonna cost us to bring it up, make it ADA compliant. And then we can weigh our options better at that point.
Right, I think that's something we can have for the October Finance Committee meeting, and then we can share back with the board at the end of October.
Sounds like a plan.
So like we said, we're
Does anybody
making
disagree with that?
decisions quickly.
I mean, we're not gonna do anything, we're just gonna put feelers out in a bunch of directions to see what, might be our best option to pursue.
Yeah, I'd also like to see if it would be a rental option as well, so the school can hold on to it in case we needed it down the road, but maybe some kind of a Catholic Charities type camp, or somebody wants to go in there and can rent from us, and we can make some money, and we wouldn't see the building go to somebody else. So, but I agree, we need to get some kind of money for it.
We need to get a plan in place, yeah. All right, so we'll do that, we'll put that back in finance, we'll pursue those options, and then we'll come back to the board at the next meeting.
Do we have a set amount in the budget that we're looking at? Because we're looking at projects here. If we have a number too, we can kind of pick out like what we're looking at for 2021, 22.
Did we have a number in the budget, Shell, of what we can put towards projects?
The 21-22 budget has projects in it already. I don't have the total.
Okay, so
budget in front of me.
21, 22 is out of it. We're
It's
looking
done,
at
right.
22, 23?
We'll be looking at 22, 23, in the January, February timeframe.
So
the budget's yet to be determined, so we don't have a number yet.
So can we get a list of what's in the 2021 or 21, 22 budget so that we can kind of compare what we might already have covered for this year versus what new concerns came up?
That'd be something for you, can you send that out to
Yeah,
everybody, Shell?
I mean, it's part of the budget packet. I can send those
Yeah, you can-
specific pages out just so you can put them on top of your list to check out.
Okay. Anything else on finance budget? No? Okay, we don't really, policy didn't meet negotiations nor curriculum, so there's really no updates there. So, I guess our next thing is to.
Mary Ann,
Yeah.
a question on policy, which I'm involved in. Has the board officially accepted the Strauss Espe policies to replace the school board's policies?
We have, and we had to, once we made the decision to do so, Lorette and I had to fill out, Ms. Amelia and I had to fill out a few things to send back to them. They're gonna clean all that up, and we should have them within the next week or two, then I can make them available to everybody, and we can approve them in October.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so I guess we want to start our regular meeting, correct?
If there's any questions on personnel that we want to discuss in executive before, we could do that, or we can go into the regular meeting.
We didn't meet.
We didn't meet, so we can't do that, but there probably are personnel things we want to discuss, but one of the first things we're going to do in the regular meeting is to go into executive session. There's several issues, that's one of them.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll
Right.
start the regular
Perfect.
meeting.
Okay, so we'll start the regular meeting all over again. The New Jersey Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Belvidere Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted with the Star Ledger and Express Times and submitted to the town clerk of the town of Belvidere on June 21st, 2021. Due to COVID-19, masks will be required at this meeting. The meeting will be live streamed at www.belvideresd.org. I guess we do the whole thing all over again, right? Flag salute. Pledge allegiance.
To the
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so you want to do roll call?
Mr. Blum?
Here.
Mrs. Costantino?
Here.
Dr. Zuppeth?
Here.
Mrs. Duckworth?
Here.
Mrs. Weidlich?
Here.
Mrs. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mrs. Steffen?
Here.
Mr. Ty?
Here.
Mrs. Williams?
Here.
Mr. White?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do public participation. Does anybody in the public have any participation for items on the agenda? No? Okay. Any correspondence?
No?
Okay, so the first thing now we have to do is we have to accept the resignation we received at the last board meeting. So can I get a motion and a second for the motion and a second to accept the resignation of Catherine Pell?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Okay. We're gonna interview the candidate to fill that position. Then we'll go into executive session to discuss the candidate, to discuss personnel, and to discuss something else. All right, so our only candidate, I believe, is Morris Scott.
That is true.
Okay, Morris, would you like to come up and to the microphone? Now, this is different than we've done this in the past, just so we know, but this is per our new policy. We interview in public, we discuss in exec, and then we decide in exec what our procedure's gonna be. So I would just ask Morris to introduce yourself, tell us what you do, why you want to be with us.
My name is Morris Scott. I'm 64 years old. I've lived in this town most of my life. I've been on several things for town. I've been on the zoning board. I've served on town council. I've served on the Peak West River Municipal Utilities Authority. I've been a Boy Scout Merit Badge counselor, and I've been thinking about being on the board. I'm out here, as some of you know, if you follow BHS Sports, I'm the guy. That's what the kids refer to me to. They don't really know my name, a lot of them, and I've been broadcasting your sports for about 8 years. I've broadcasted every football game and a lot of other sports for the kids. I've met a lot of the parents, and they're just like me and you, and I thought this might be a good fit for me. I saw an opening that was 3 months, and I said it would be a good way for me to try it out without fully committing to a 3-year term, and if I like it, then I'll run again to fill the seat, and if I don't, then I won't. So if you have any questions for me, I think that's important that you know that I own Scott Bus Company. But I don't do any work for you guys, just Belvidere, White Hope, Harmony, Warren County Special Services School District, and a few other districts in some other counties. If you have any questions?
Who has any questions for Morris? I have one. I always ask everybody, do you have any immediate family members that are in a education union, in another school district, in this school district, anywhere?
No.
None, period?
No.
Okay.
No, I have no experience with school board whatsoever, although you'll probably see my dad's name on some of these plaques around the hallway. He spent about 20 or 30 years on the Belvidere Board of Education. This is about the only hat I haven't worn yet.
Mr. Scott, does your bus company currently benefit financially in any way from the school district?
From Belvidere School District?
Whether it be to bring people to or from the school?
I bring people to the school, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I had something else I was going to say, but now Mr. White made me forget it.
Sorry?
That's okay.
Do you have a contract directly with the Belvidere district or the outside?
No, I have no contracts with Belvidere. Just right now, the only contracts I have would be from Harmony Township and from Warren County Special Services School District. My company only takes special needs children to school. We don't do anything.
Can you, I know we had a thing, but can you get closer to the mic, because I don't think anybody could hear your answer.
My company doesn't take, it's not a regular school bus company. It's a smaller bus company that takes kids with disabilities to school.
Morris, in the interest of full transparency, though, you have an immediate family member who has a contract with Belvidere?
I paid you $10 not to say that,
I'm
Brian.
sorry. Here, take it back.
Yes, I don't think my sister Kim only does your sports transportation. She doesn't have, I don't know, is that contracted services or is that on a per, I don't know. Yes, but my sister Kim,
Contract.
Dal Rumpel, is the owner of B&K Bus Company, and she may or may not have contracts with you, I don't know.
I believe they do. Kyle was on our board for quite a while.
Yeah,
Kyle
my
Dalrymple.
nephew is Kyle.
Yeah. Any other questions? No?
My dad served on this board when he was in transportation also, so if there was anything that I thought was, or anybody thought was in, what was that called, in conflict? Is that the right thing? I would have appropriately recused myself from voting. Maybe even participating in the conversation, I would recuse myself from that, possibly.
Okay, thanks, Morris.
You're welcome.
All right, so can I get a motion and a second to go into executive session to discuss the potential board member, to discuss personnel issues, and to discuss some attorney-client privilege information? Motion and a second?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we're going to go to executive session, I don't know, half an hour maybe, 15 minutes to a half an hour? And then we'll be back, and obviously we'll take action on the rest of our agenda. Okay, so we're back from executive session. Brian, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I move the appointment of Morris Scott to fill the seat vacated by Mrs. Pell due to resignation.
Any comments or discussion we need to have on that?
You have a second.
Oh, a second, sorry.
Second.
Okay, any comments, questions, discussion? Sorry. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Morris, welcome.
You have to swear me in, or?
Yes, absolutely, we have to swear you in. We also need a place for you to sit. Okay, I didn't see that, sorry. Bill, you want to do the honors?
Let's see, you can sit if you like.
Just for the rest of you, I'd said that my wife would be very happy that I'll be out of the house 2 days a month now. Do you want me to read this?
I state your name.
Stand, you got to stand up.
Okay. And should I do the official right hand?
Probably, yeah.
I, Morris Scott,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in the United States and this state
and to the governments established in the United States and in this state
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I state your name.
I, Morris Scott,
Do solemnly
do
swear
solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of member of the Board of Education,
for office of member of the Board of Education,
and that I am not disqualified as a voter
and that I am not disqualified as a voter
pursuant to RS 19-4-1,
pursuant to RS 19-4-1,
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense
due to the conviction of a crime or offense
listed in NJS 18A 12-1,
listed in NJS 18A 12-1,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
perform all duties of that office
perform all duties of that office
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
If you could sign that and then hand that in at the end, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, well, like I said, welcome aboard, Morris.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
For the 2 new board members, we only have a couple months left in this year, and as you know, January 1st is reorganization. Morris, what you don't know is every January 1st, the board is reorganized into committees and that kind of thing. And this, for the sake of ease, if you guys would just want to assume the committee roles that you are replacing the people of, Tad was curriculum and
Finance.
Finance.
finance?
Finance.
Chair.
No, Catherine was finance chair.
Yeah, isn't that what Morris
She
is
said,
taking over?
No,
she
I
said
said Heather.
For
He was on
Tad.
finance.
Tad was on finance?
Tad was
Maybe-
curriculum chair.
Yeah,
Curriculum
curriculum
chair. I
chair,
don't
but
think he
we
was
was
on
on
finance.
something else.
I don't know what other committee, but I was on curriculum with them.
Well, anyway, curriculum, and we'll figure out if there was another one, Heather, and then Catherine was on finance and personnel. So
I have plenty of experience with those.
Chris will let you know when we're going to have meetings. We kind of try to develop schedules for our meetings, the first week, second week type thing, and he'll give you all that information.
I send out a weekly update, just so you guys know, and with this weekly update, I'll have the month of October's meetings with that, so just check for that Friday or Saturday.
Okay.
All right? Okay, so now we can move on. We're on to, John is here to do an ethics presentation for the board.
1 second.
Okay.
I'm going to talk to the board member for 1 second.
All right.
1 minute.
How long is your proposed goals going to take?
You can probably have it done in 10 minutes. Let me
You want to do that first? Do that first and let them talk. All right, we're going to discuss Chris's proposed goals for the year.
Since it's a superintendent's report, I do have a couple other things too,
Oh, sorry.
if I can. First thing I would like to, I guess I'll say comment on is, as I emailed the board last night, we did have the passing of one of our staff members yesterday. Ed Demers Sr. Passed away yesterday, and I'm trying not to get too emotional if I can, but for those of us that knew Ed Demers Sr., we have great people that work in this district that really truly care about kids. I'd put Ed Demers Sr. at the top of that list. He cared about our students day in and day out. I've had the pleasure of knowing Ed for the last 12 years. I've always considered Ed a friend. He was just a great person to talk to. He was a great person to be around. He had the respect, I believe, of everybody that works in this district, all of our students, and everybody that's been in contact with him. It was hard to hear the news yesterday. It really was. It was a shock to most of us, and I think that he will be greatly missed, and I think we would be remiss in not commenting on what he has done for our students. When I got home last night, I actually told my wife a few stories about some of the interactions that I had with Ed, and I'm going to just share one quick one. My second year as high school principal, we had a fight in the cafeteria, and as I was helping break it up and Mr. Demers was in there, there was a secondary fight. And when I talked to the one student, I said, why did you even start the second fight? He goes, well, the first kid hit Mr. Demers, and I wasn't having that. And that was just the kind of person he was, the kind of respect he had from our students. And, Ed Demers Sr. will be greatly missed by all of us. So if we could just have like a quick moment of silence for Ed, I think that'd be appropriate. Thank you for that. I am going to do my presentation. I did ask Mr. Karabinas and Ms. McKinney if they could just take a minute and discuss the changes to the schedule that's going to take place now. We're going to push that back to October the 11th. We had a couple of complications, which is why we didn't jump right at it once the contract was settled. One of our issues was with one of our sending districts and the buses, so we feel like we've come up with a good plan with that. So maybe, Ms. McKinney, if you want to go first, and then Mr. Karabinas, if you want to just piggyback right off of that.
Good evening, everybody. So at the high school, what we are doing is we've added about 1 to 2 minutes to each of the periods to add to the instructional time. That pushes us back to 2:30. In trying to help this hope situation, what we have decided to do, and I truly appreciate one of our parents for giving me a call and making the suggestion, the hope students would have had to have missed about 10 minutes of the last block, and we are trying to find different ways to avoid that. So we are actually going to push our homeroom back to the end of the day because it's a 10-minute block. So that way when they leave, they're not missing anything, and that will alleviate that problem. We're hoping that this extra time in the classes gives the teachers more ability to do different things in their classroom. So we will see how that goes.
Go ahead, Doug. You got something to
Belvidere
say?
Elementary School, we currently run an 8:05 to a 2:25 schedule. All we're doing is bumping from an 8 to a 2:20 schedule. We're going to keep a 7:50 drop-off. We're going to extend homeroom 10 minutes because there's been a lot of shuffle. We're going to put our targeted skills to 30 minutes and dismiss at 2:20, and we won't have any contact with transportation, so it should be a smoother, because right now, we're delayed with dismissal because we wait for the buses to leave, so it will be a much smoother exit for us. So no major changes to the schedule other than making sure we don't have any conflict with transition time with the high school.
So you're gonna dismiss 10 minutes earlier to avoid the high school bus car situation?
Correct. We'll be
Okay.
10 minutes earlier than the high school
Okay.
departure.
Doug, did you have
I
something?
just wanted to say, we had our meeting last night, and overall, our board was very appreciative of the hoops that you guys are going through to make this work, and figuring out, to solve the problem. So, thank you very much. So, we appreciate it.
And we had planned on starting it on Monday this week, but we also have our Start Strong testing next week, and we were running modified schedules as it was. We just felt it was more efficient to start it on the 11th. So we'll go on the 11th, and all call will go out district-wide tomorrow, just explaining the changes. And that way, if there's any questions, it gives us 10 days. And one of the things we were glad about taking the first 10 days was if there was any issues that we weren't thinking about come up, and two of the issues that came up, Mrs. Duckworth was the one who originally brought up the buses leaving at the same time as the kids. We worked on that, and then in talking with Mr. Newman over in Hope and then Mr. Ty about losing academic time, we were able to come up with a plan. So we're willing to adjust if there's anything we're missing, so if any concerns or questions, just let us know. Okay. Do you want me to do my presentation? You want John to do his? We can go back and forth.
John's is up there. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it's up there. Should I take the mic?
Yeah, you should take the mic so people can hear you.
Looks like there's not a lot of public, which is good, because this is really focused on the Board of Education, this presentation. But it could be somewhat interesting for the public to hear things. As far as changing slides, how should we do? Can I just Oh, and it'll just go forward one? Okay. Let's see. Let's try to go forward one. Okay. So we're talking tonight about it's sort of an overview of school ethics. There's two primary legal bases for school ethics in New Jersey. The first is the School Ethics Act itself, which is legislation that provides that the goal is to make sure that the board members continue to hold the respect and confidence of the people. And so they basically declared that school officials must avoid conduct which is in violation of their public trust or which creates a justifiable impression that the public trust is being violated. And so basically that's the philosophy. And they've added that it's to ensure and preserve public confidence. School board members and local school administrators should have the benefit of standards to guide their conduct and some disciplinary mechanism to ensure the uniform maintenance of those standards. School officials include the board members themselves, but it also applies to upper-level school administrators. They're also covered by the School Ethics Act, and New Jersey School Boards Association people, but that's not so relevant to us. So the Act addresses conflicts of interest. So we'll go through it quickly, but the Act addresses conflicts of interest which can arise for board members, in our case particularly. But there's also a code of ethics. And the code of ethics applies only to the board members. It doesn't apply to the other administrators. And the code of ethics helps guide board members into what's appropriate and what they can do to make sure they maintain the public trust. There's a School Ethics Commission. It's made up of 9 members. And basically what the School Ethics Commission does, it handles complaints about ethics towards school officials. It also issues advisory opinions. So if there's a question about whether something is permitted or not, you can write to the School Ethics Commission and get an advisory opinion to give you some guidance on it. They also publish many advisory opinions, and it's on their website. So in some questions, you can go to those, and you may find guidance that will help you answer the issue. They also, because they handle complaints, they also make decisions, and we'll talk about that in a minute, about whether someone actually violated the act. They also receive the disclosure statements. All board members are required to file personal and financial disclosure statements. They receive them. And they also enforce the training requirements for board members. The School Ethics Act, if somebody is alleged to have violated the act or the code of ethics. The School Ethics Commission is the first body that decides the issue, and they have a few penalties. They can reprimand someone, which is a private thing. They can censure them, which is public, and it would have to be read in the board at a board meeting and published on like the website. They can also suspend board members, or in a really extreme case, which is extremely rare, they could also remove someone from the board for violating the Ethics Act. The Ethics Commission makes the decision initially. It then goes to the Commissioner of Education, who makes a final decision, and then that could be appealed to the Appellate Division of the Superior Court. As I mentioned, you've already had a lot going on tonight, so some of these we can go through. If anyone has any questions afterwards, always you can reach out to me through the board president or the superintendent. But there are requirements for filing personal and financial disclosure statements. The New Jersey School Boards Association conducts the training programs that are required for new board members. So let's talk about the two main aspects of the ethics law. First is conflicts of interest. This is in the Ethics Act itself. All right? Some things apply to immediate family members. Other issues may apply to relatives. And there's slightly different definitions. Well, quite different. The member of immediate family means the spouse or dependent child of a school official that resides in the same household. That's the definition of immediate family member. Relative is much broader. It does include a spouse, a civil union partner, parent, child, sibling, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, grandparent, son-in-law, daughter-in-law. Again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but that relative is a much broader definition. But in some cases, the Act will say you can't have anything, a conflict involving an immediate family member, a relative, or other person. That's very broad when it says other, and that basically applies to just about anybody if they receive some sort of unwarranted privilege. So we'll talk about that a little bit. What is an unwarranted privilege? There's two examples in one of the advisory opinions from the Ethics Commission. Basically, in one case, a wife's cousin applied for a position. Now, cousin is not in the list of relatives that are covered by the Act. But the cousin was not the most qualified candidate, and the board member used their position to get her hired. So even though she wasn't technically a relative under the definition, because she wasn't qualified, when the board member exercised their influence, that was an unwarranted privilege, and so that was found to be a violation. And in the same decision, the wife's cousin was a coach in the district. The board member worked to obtain a stipend for coaches without cause, but not for other extracurricular staff, just for the coaches. And that was found to be an unwarranted privilege because, again, even though it wasn't technically a relative under the definition, the board member did something that was unwarranted. All right. So the rules are on conflicts. No school official or member of his family shall have an interest in a business organization, member of his immediate family, shall have an interest in a business organization or engage in any business, transaction, or professional activity which is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of his duties. No school official shall use or attempt to use his official position to secure unwarranted privileges, advantages, or employment for himself, members of his immediate family, or others. That's where the others thing comes in with the unwarranted privileges. Also, no school official shall act in his official capacity in any matter where he, a member of his immediate family, or a business organization in which he has an interest, has a direct or indirect financial involvement that might reasonably be expected to impair his objectivity or independence of judgment. No school official shall act in his official capacity in any matter where he or a member of his immediate family has a personal involvement that is or creates some benefit to the school official or member of his immediate family. No school official shall undertake any employment or service, whether compensated or not, which might reasonably be expected to prejudice his independence of judgment in the exercise of his official duties. E is no school official or member of his immediate family or business organization in which he has an interest shall solicit or accept any gift, favor, loan, etc., for the purpose of influencing him directly or indirectly in his discharge of his official duties. There is exception with respect to campaign contributions for an announced candidate, as long as there's no reason to believe the campaign contribution was given specifically with the intent to influence the school official. So that's a little bit of a loophole, but technically if there's an ongoing campaign contributions are probably okay, but any other types of gifts or loans could be problematic. No school official shall use or allow to be used his public office or employment or any information not generally available to the members of the public, which he receives in the course of his duties for the purpose of securing financial gain for himself, any member of his immediate family, or any business organization with which he's associated. So maintaining confidentiality and not using confidential information is important. This will come up again in the Code of Ethics when we talk about it in a couple of minutes. No school official or business organization in which he has an interest shall represent any person or party other than the school board or school district in connection with any cause brought before the board or involving the school district for which he served. All right. That doesn't mean that you can't, a board member can't advocate on behalf of their own child, for instance, if they have a child in the district. That would be permitted, but representing some other outside agency in a conflict with the board would be prohibited. There's some general things that says that no school official shall be deemed in conflict if by reason of his participation no material or monetary gain accrues to him as a member of any business, profession, or group to any greater extent than any gain could be expected to accrue to any other member of that business profession. No elected member shall be prohibited from making inquiry for information on behalf of a constituent if there's no fee, reward, or other thing of value promised to them. And nothing shall prohibit any school official from representing himself or themselves in negotiations or proceedings, including his or their own interests. That's what I was saying, like if you're representing your own family in an issue before the board, that's okay. That's about school boards, we'll skip that. All right, so all that detail we talked about, and you can always look at that, that's all detailed about actual conflicts that could arise through a business that you have or some interest that your family members may have where there may be a conflict. And those things are always fact sensitive and should always, if there's any potential issue, it's something that we should discuss and we can talk about whether we think it's a conflict or not, and in appropriate cases request an advisory opinion. With respect to two main issues, labor negotiations and issues related to the superintendent's contract. There was an ethics opinion that came out a few years ago, September 26, 2017, that I really recommend to everybody because it really basically covers all the conflicts that come up in the labor negotiation and most of the conflicts that come up in the labor negotiation and superintendent contract areas. It's A24-17. And what's cool is it actually has a chart in it that they published where they list like what the potential conflict is, and then there's like boxes that tell you, is it a conflict, is it not a conflict, what you can participate in, what you can't participate in. So we'll just go through that quickly. That's at least part of the chart. So with respect to labor negotiations, collective bargaining. And by the way, some of this changed when they came out with the decision 4 years ago. The prohibitions on who could participate in labor negotiations used to be a little broader, and they've narrowed them some. They've made it broader in a sense. They've allowed more participation in negotiations now than they used to. Absent another conflict, a board member who is currently a member of any statewide public teachers union, but in another school district, cannot participate in any aspect of negotiations until the memorandum of agreement, including the salary guides and the total compensation package, has been attained. After the memorandum and the salary guides are agreed on, the board member can, absent another conflict, vote on the collective negotiations agreement. So a board member who works in another district can't be involved in negotiations, can't be involved in the approval of the original memorandum of agreement. But once you get past that, If there's a vote on the actual contract itself, they can participate in that. A board member with an immediate family member who is employed in the district cannot participate in any aspect of negotiations, including the vote on the collective negotiations agreement following attainment of the memorandum of the agreement, of the memorandum of agreement. So if you have an immediate family member employed in this district, then you can't be involved in the negotiations at all. Absent another conflict, a board member with an immediate family member who is currently a member of any statewide public teachers union, but in another school district, cannot participate in any aspect of negotiations until the memorandum of agreement, including salary guides, et cetera, has been attained. After the memorandum of agreement is obtained and the salary guides, the board member would be able to vote on the collective negotiations agreement.
John, can you go back one? Sorry, back two.
Not sure. Will this take me back?
For the definition of immediate family member here, are we using our policy or are we using the state policy?
This would come from, the definition of immediate family would come from the School Ethics Act.
Okay,
So the definition of immediate family member is, it was a slide earlier, but it's
Yep.
basically a spouse or a dependent child that lives in the
Is that
household.
the address? Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Now, what we were talking about up to that point, those previous few slides, was immediate family members. So now we'll talk a little bit about relatives, okay, which is a little broader. A board member with a relative who is employed in the district cannot participate in any aspect of negotiations, including the vote on the collective negotiations agreement following the memorandum of agreement. So if you have an in-district relative, you can't be involved at all. But absent another, and this was a change, I think, this next one, like 4 years ago. Absent another conflict, a board member with a relative who is currently a member of any statewide public teachers union but works in another school district can participate in all aspects of negotiations, including the vote on the collective negotiations agreement following attainment of the memorandum of agreement. So if it's a relative that works in another district, then you can participate in negotiations. Now, a corollary of the negotiations is questions related to the superintendent and terms and conditions of hiring a superintendent or doing his evaluation and giving him a new contract, et cetera, issues related to the superintendent. So a board member who has a relative or immediate family member employed in the district is also prohibited from participating in any and all issues related to the superintendent, including, left a T out there, including the search, contract approval, evaluation. So if it's an in-district conflict, the board member can't be involved in the issues related to the superintendent. However, absent another conflict, a board member who is a member of the same statewide union but in another district, and a board member with an immediate family member or relative who is a member of the same statewide union but in another district is not per se prohibited from participating in any and all matters related to the superintendent. All right, so everything we talked about so far was related to the actual conflicts of interest. There's also a code of ethics for board members, and this governs a lot of the day-to-day stuff that comes up with respect to board members. All right, it's also in the statute, it's in 24.1. And after we go through this, I'll talk quickly about a few recent cases just to give some examples of things related to the Code of Ethics. Section A, I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures. This one has actually come up a lot. It didn't used to come up very often, but it's come up a lot recently because of things like the mask mandates. And in other districts, it became a big issue, whereas some districts, were thinking, well, even though the governor signed an executive order or there's laws in place, we're not sure we want to follow it. And that would be a problem for a variety of reasons. I mean, there's legal the executive orders do have the force of law in New Jersey, so they're required to be filed for that reason. But it also could be an ethical problem for the board and the board members, because under the Code of Ethics for board members, the board members are sworn to uphold and enforce all laws of the state of New Jersey and rules and regulations of the State Board of Education. And so that, now, desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures. That doesn't mean the board couldn't advocate for a position, but in doing so, you have to follow what the law is, basically. B, I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing. And that's just sort of a general, pronouncement and philosophy that board members should follow. C. Section C and D are kind of flip sides of the same coin. And these are ones that do come up fairly often if you look at not only advisory opinions, but actual ethics decisions that come out over the years. I will confine my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. So that's section C. And section D says, I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run. And those two provisions are really important. The board is a policy-making body, it's an advisory body, it's sort of an oversight body, but the day-to-day running of the schools is the responsibility of the superintendent and the administration. And sometimes that we'll go over a few examples where that sometimes becomes an issue for board members. All right, this one also comes up. I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises, nor take any private action that may compromise the board. And this is real important for board members to understand. As an individual board member, you don't have any power yourself. It's the board as a body, the board as a whole, that can take action and to do things. So board members have to be real careful if they're out and not to make any representations personally or promise anything or saying, oh, the board will do that or the board will do, not do that or whatever. Unless you've been authorized by the board as a whole to do that, it's up to the whole board to decide things. I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends. The personal gain stuff, a lot of that is covered in the conflict of interest regulations that we talked about already. Boards are supposed to be nonpartisan, and so a board member should be making decisions in the best interest of the children and should not be surrendering their independent judgment to any special interest or political groups. G is an important one. I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and, in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its school. This generally, the first part of this is maintaining confidentiality. It comes out in a number of matters: student matters, personnel matters, contract negotiations, and things that happen in executive session. All, it's important that the board members maintain the confidentiality of those things. H, I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the school leader. And yet, everyone has to understand, under New Jersey law, it's only the superintendent that can recommend that someone be hired. Now, the board will vote on those recommendations, and the board has to use its judgment to decide what to do, but the board cannot say, oh, I don't like this person, I want that person. It's the superintendent that has to bring forth the candidates for the board to vote on. I will support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. And this goes back to a lot of the things I was saying before about it's a policy-making board, you don't administer the school, but it's important the board should be supporting the administration and the staff in everything that they're doing in running the school. this is an important one on the chain of command. I will refer all complaints to the school leader and will act on the complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution. This is a very important one. People will come up to you, members of the public, they will raise issues, they'll ask you questions about things, and it's always important to remember, follow the chain of command. Report, you can refer them to the chain of command yourself. It may be that someone has a student issue, and you can say, well, you really should take that to the principal. But if nothing else, report it to the superintendent so that the superintendent can then refer things to the chain of command. But it's important to follow the chain of command and not to bring up issues with the board that haven't gone through the chain of command process and the administrative process. All right, how am I doing on time? How long have I gone? It's quarter of. All right, we'll try to go quick. Code of ethics, just a few cases, just for some examples for the board members. There's a case out of Delsey. A board member went directly to the guidance office and requested information from the guidance secretary and also inspected lockers. This violated Section D. All right. He also took a parent complaint to the principal directly rather than the superintendent. Another good spelling job. Took a parent complaint to the principal rather than the superintendent. This violated Section J. So the board member, again, took action themselves. They went to the guidance office, requested information. They inspected lockers. They took a parent complaint themselves to the principal rather than referring the parent to the principal or going to the superintendent. So these were violations. West Essex, the president and vice president met with the Teachers Association without the superintendent knowing about it. This violated Section C and D. For this one, they actually got a 1-month suspension from the board as well as a censure. A case out of, I don't know if New Jersey calls it Greenwich or Greenwich, but out of East Greenwich or Greenwich, board member replied all to a confidential email from the board president, inadvertently including the parent and a teacher on his response. So this is something you just always have to be careful with the email replying all. But in this case, it was a violation of confidentiality. This violated Section G. West Windsor case, a board member forwarded a message from a parent to his immediate family members. One of his immediate family members shared the message with countless others. Eventually, it reached the student who was the subject of the message. Another violation. A case out of Wantage. Board member went into the schools on his own and took photos of open windows and maxi pads were in a bathroom, and then spoke with reporters about it and gave them copies of the pictures. So again, the board member took their own action. Instead of reporting, hey, there's an issue, and reporting it to the superintendent, the board member went in, took pictures, and then went to the newspaper. This violated multiple sections of the Code of Ethics, including J. South Orange Maplewood case, a board member was pulled over by the police. This was in the news last year. Pulled over by the police, said she was a board member, cursed at the officer, threatened to call the South Orange Village president, who I guess is like the mayor in South Orange. She violated E and F, and she got a 30-day suspension. Recent case that I think is significant, particularly as we get into political season. Recent case out of Randolph in Morris County. A board member wrote an op-ed endorsing 4 candidates in the board election and negatively arguing against the candidate of another board member. The Ethics Commission noted that board members still have First Amendment rights, and they've allowed endorsements and letters to the editors as long as they have disclaimers in them, right? In this case, the commission noted that it has been receiving a lot of complaints since the explosion of social media. And the commission took the opportunity to tighten the disclaimer rule and also to caution against public statements that are too entangled with board matters. Okay? The board member, in this case, accused a fellow board member who was a candidate of being a poor communicator, subject to outbursts of emotion, and poor at advanced preparation. The board member, so they basically were referring to their fellow board members' activity on the board, and they were criticizing the way they handled themselves on the board. Then they used a disclaimer. They wrote, the author is writing this endorsement on his own personal belief. His opinions are his own. The Ethics Commission said the disclaimer was not enough. And they basically endorsed the following disclaimer for these types of comments. The following statements, again typing, the following statements are made in my capacity as a private citizen and not in my capacity as a board member. These statements are also not representative of the board or its individual members and solely represent my own personal opinions. So this is a change. The Ethics Commission now, whether you're forgetting about just the political aspect of this, if you're writing a letter to the editor or any communication, the Ethics Commission seems to be saying, this is the disclaimer you should be using. It should be really specific and follow this format. All right, that's what they're saying now. But in this case, they went a little further. They said that basically a disclaimer on its own is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Just because you put the disclaimer, that doesn't mean you can say whatever you want. Even if an appropriate disclaimer is used, a board member must never hide behind the disclaimer to discuss or comment on board business or matters in a manner that leads a member of the public to believe that the individual is speaking on behalf of or as a representative of the board. So in this case, the Randolph case, the disclaimer wasn't enough because the board member made multiple references to a position on the board and to board matters generally and was referring to another board member and how they were acting on the board. So the Ethics Commission said, even though you put in a disclaimer, that's not good enough. You still shouldn't be talking about board business in a way that would lead people to believe that even though you put in the disclaimer, you're talking as a representative of the board. They found that this was a violation of sections B, A, and E, and the board member was censured. It now goes to the Commissioner of Education. The last time I checked a couple days ago, I don't think there's been a decision from the Commissioner on this yet. So this is still the latest on this. Volunteering, I'll just say quickly. It's okay for board members to volunteer, for instance, as a president of the PTA, as a homeroom parent. A board member remains a parent, can support their children, but volunteering does become an issue if the board member has too much involvement with staff and students. That is where the board member has authority to give and receive directions and orders. All right, so for instance, some issues have come up where someone was a volunteer coach or a club advisor, or there was a case involving the school play where the parent was like helping to direct the school play and was very involved in day-to-day communications with the staff and the students and giving directions. That can be a problem. On the other hand, other activities like homeroom parent, PTA president, that's okay. So if there's any concerns about that, again, it's a case-by-case basis. We could talk about it. Also, as we're in election season, endorsement of a candidate by the local education association or the NJEA is not a per se conflict unless a financial contribution is given and it is intended to influence the board member in the exercise of his or her duties. This is examined on a case-by-case basis. As we said before, a board member cannot surrender their independent judgment to a special interest group. It's okay for the local or the NJEA to endorse someone, but if there's any financial contributions, then that becomes a more serious question. That's it. Enough. Any questions now? We can always talk another time.
Anybody have any questions for John? I know we went through that kind of quick, but I thank you, John, for doing that training. Okay, back to you, Chris.
You guys are lucky. I pared this down from 2 hours to 90 minutes, so I'm really excited about this. I know you guys all are too. I will be sharing both presentations with you on Friday with the weekly update, just so you have them. And then again, if you have any questions on either one of them, send them to me and I'll either myself answer them or I'll have John answer them as well. So really, as we discussed at the last meeting, we have two goals this year for myself. One is academic improvement, and number two is the facility plan. My academic improvement plan is a little more detailed. The facility one, I think we've been sort of working through it already. and I did a little more of an outline of kind of the markers of what we're trying to hit. So I'll send that over to you, but I thought the academic improvement one was a little more pertinent and more important tonight. So in meeting with the administrative team, we came up with 10 areas that we would like to be focused on for this year. This is not the end-all, be-all. If there's something that you think we need to focus on, please let us know, and we'll be happy to work with that. So number one is going to be, and this is in no particular order, by the way, articulation, social emotional learning awareness, authentic assessments, new modalities we'll be using this year, data analysis, pre-K student analysis, the concept of a parent university, our skills needed / learned, and measurable goals. And then again, we want to get back to celebrating academic success, and hopefully we can start to have the students here a little more often. So I'll try to go through this quickly, but we recognize that articulation, while we've gotten a little bit better at it, is an area of need. Number one, vertical, and this is one of the main jobs of the pre-K to 12 instructional coordinators that we're having on there. And this will be done within the district, and will be done with the building principals and the coordinator. We want to make sure that, first and foremost, that each grade level is aware of what the previous grade level was covering and what the expectations were and what those skills were. We think that we started to make some inroads on this last year, but we really want to push this forward. And then secondly, and probably could be more importantly, is the cluster-wide articulation. Since I've been here, we have been hit or miss with cluster-wide articulation. We did last year, Ms. McKinney, one of her functions in the Director of Instruction, Special Projects and Innovation was to work on that. We did have some very good cluster-wide articulation. We're hoping to get that back on track this year, but really we see it as the benefit to the high school students that all of our students are as close to or on the same page when they get here when they start as freshmen. So we're going to be working on that, and that'll be something we'll be jumping into shortly. I'm not going to read all this. This is our social emotional process, focused more on K to 8. As you can see, we do have some programs in 9 through 12, but right now we're focused on the K to 8, including, as you can see, the 6 pillars of character. Obviously, with the students returning this year after being out, not out necessarily, but not in a formal setting over the last 18 months, we do recognize that there's not just learning issues that need to be addressed, but behavior and emotional issues. It was interesting, Mr. Carabina sent out today to his staff through homeroom a chart that said, if you were in this grade, the last time you had a normal year was this grade. So 7th grade, if you're 7th grade, the last time you were in a normal year was 4th grade. And when you look back down to, I think it was 3rd grade and below, there's never been a normal year for those students. So that's an issue that we have to address. It was actually interesting having a conversation with Ms. McKinney today. And she got a call from the prosecutor's office, right? Where they were asking if we had had a lot of fights at Belvidere High School so far this year. And we are happy to say, and somebody knock on wood and everybody knock on wood, the answer is no. But they've been seeing a lot of upticks in altercations in the other area high schools. So you can see just the kids being pushed back in, pushed back in for a full day, some not being used to being here. That's an issue. So this is going to be a focus for us because we know if the students aren't there emotionally, they're going to have a hard time academically. And this goes along with that, too, our authentic assessment through the RTI process, specifically looking at our kids, understanding what they come to our schools with every day, not just looking at as a student as a test score or a grade, but what's going on in the family life. Where can we offer help for that student? What can we do to make sure that when they are here, they're focused on academics? You know, we talk about sometimes we don't realize a student may have come to school today, may not have eaten dinner last night, may not have eaten breakfast this morning. We want to make sure our kids have everything that they need, and that's why we're equipped with all academic and social and emotional skills to survive. So this is something we'll continue to work with. I feel like I'm running through this, but it's also 9 o'clock, so I know you guys kind of want me to do that. For K-8 this year, the new modalities we'll be using will be focused again on Acadians, and that will help guide the program and targeted skills period. And then in math, using Envision 2.0 again for that targeted skills. I think Mr. Carabina said that's something we'll be focused on shortly now that we've got the schedule up and running. So that targeted skills, we're going to make sure that when we recognize that a student is missing a specific skill, we're going to work to address that and build that skill with that student. So that's one of the things I think we're most excited about, is to really be able to look at every student individually. Whoops. That was a lot. Data analysis, something that we've gotten much better at over the last few years. These are going to be our areas of focus. Link It, this will be our second year. We just administered the Link It assessments over the last couple of days, so we should have those scores quickly. We're still working on some of the students that missed it. We're going to be taking a look at a couple of things. Number one, initially is where our students are now. We're going to look at the same group as to where they were at this time last year. For a classroom teacher, if you're teaching third grade math, we'll look at your kids today. We'll look at the students that you had last year at this time and kind of get a comparison as to where they are. Second thing is our RTI meetings. We'll be getting those underway shortly. And again, it's part of our 5-year process. We've talked about that, being able to identify our students, where they are, some of the extra services that they may or may not need, and making sure that all our students have a strong academic background. Third thing, which I mentioned, is the Start Strong testing, which we are doing next week. That is the state-mandated testing to see whether our students have regressed, if they're on grade level. My understanding is that those test scores are coming back very quickly. I know Phillipsburg had done them, and they got the results back probably within a week and a half. So they also went very early, so maybe that'll be a reason why they got them back so quick. But hopefully we'll be able to see where our students are. AP scores, we want to take a look at our AP scores, see where we are, look at where our students are on the test, as well as where they are comparatively in the classroom. So if a student is getting a 1 on an AP test and they're getting a 99 in the class, we have concerns with that. So that's something we'll be looking at this year, try to see where that goes. And then again, we'll be looking at our SAT scores to find out where our strengths and weaknesses are. This is what we talked about, Mr. Karabinas and I. I actually have a picture that I looked at just the other day of our first pre-K class when they came in January of that year. In fact, Mr. Scott, you are hugging Mr. Karabinas in the picture. It's quite a funny picture. But those students are now currently in 3rd grade. And we are going to take a good look now specifically at that group and then the groups behind them and see where they are, how they're looking at those standardized assessments, and what the grades have looked like, and if we've seen any behavior issues. Remember, when we went into this program to start, we were hoping that by having our pre-K, when the students got into kindergarten, they were more prepared for school. And our kindergarten teacher was able to focus more on actual instruction rather than teaching the kids on how to be in a school. So it's going to be real interesting to take a look at that. I'll be reporting out at some point on that in the near future. This is an idea that's been kicked around for quite a long time, the idea of a parent university and how do we get the parents more involved. This year, I think what we're going to try is to do a video series, something like with Ms. McKinney last year put out for the parents on how to use the Link It data. It's about a 10-minute video where she was talking and running through PowerPoints on how to do that. I'm going to do that as well as the administrators. We're going to put a series together. We'd also like to get the teachers involved with that. And here's some of our suggested topics for this year. Certainly, if you have something you'd like to know about, let us know. Grade level skills, study skills, again, that SEL needs, parents helping students with schoolwork, and then any other topics that may come up by parents. We're hoping to get more of a connection with the parents, helping the parents help their students. And when we say helping, that does not mean parents doing the work for their students. That means parents helping their students with their work. And sometimes we know that some of the parents do a little more than that. This is a repeat from last year, but we want to do it again this year, looking at the skills by class. So we're going to ask the teachers what skills they think that the students should have when they exit the class. We're going to look at that from the combination of the NJSLA and the Link It assessments and show that's what's actually being assessed. And then we're going to have the higher grade teachers look back and say what they need to be in that class. So if I'm teaching Algebra 2, what Algebra 1 skills did I need? What geometry skills did I need? And then all the comparisons to both, and we will share that information with parents. And we decided to just put out measurable goals. We want to see increases. So we start out with hopefully something that's attainable, a 5% increase in our AP scores, 5% in SAT, 5% across the board in NJSLA, 5% increase in attendance pre-K to 8. That has been one of the areas that we have lagged in. We have put some plans in together. It definitely got bounced around because of the COVID situation. But I know Mr. Karabinas has a tremendous support staff in place right now to try to get our students here. We know the students aren't here take COVID out of it, not here on a consistent basis, they're not learning, they're not going to do well. So that's something we're going to focus on. And then again, lastly, for the academic improvement, celebrating the academic successes. We'd like to get our students back to the Board of Ed meetings, increase promotion through social media, increase promotion of the student accomplishments in our building, whether it's announcements, assemblies, and then a quarterly newsletter published out of the superintendent's office, which will likely be an online version of it, promoting our students' accomplishments. So if I have students that are only in the elementary school, may not know what the good things are going on in high school and vice versa. So we want to get that out there. And then very quickly, the facilities plan areas of focus. We will review the plan, which we started to do with the finance committee. We'll be, Shelley and I will work on a potential timeline of implementation, and then you can kind of see going down what our priorities will be. And then hopefully we'll have a timeline that we can meet and continue to work on these projects. So that was a very quick version of my goals. I will send that out, but if you have any questions, feel free.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody have any questions for Chris on that?
No.
No? Okay.
I'd like to recommend we have Mr. Crew come and speak every time I'm presenting.
I didn't realize you were presenting. I would have tried to go even quicker.
All right, we can get to our regular agenda. So can I get a motion and a second for personnel items 1 through 16A? There's 2 add-ons on a sheet.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Questions or comments for Chris? Discussion, anybody? Okay, Shell, I guess is roll call, right?
Yes.
Dr. Zuppeth?
Yep.
Yes.
Mrs. Duckworth?
Yes, I abstain from 6.
Mrs. Weidlich?
I abstain.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I'm going to abstain on number 7, the McHugh appointment, because of some of the troubling things I heard, but on the other hand, I didn't hear her side of the story, so I'm abstaining just on that part.
Mrs. Steppen?
Yes to all but no to Sam McHugh on item 7.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes, and I'm abstaining from Ms. McHugh.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a motion and a second for education items 17 through, we also have an add-on of 20.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Questions, comments, any discussion? No? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain. I abstain from 19, the ag event.
You good?
I'm going to abstain from everything.
Didn't call your name either.
Yeah, you forgot him, Shell.
I did not. So on the personnel motions, you'll abstain as well, Mr. Scott?
We need it, yeah, in the order.
You also abstain, she forgot to call you. You're also abstaining on the personnel.
Oh, yeah, I'll abstain on that personnel deal, too.
All right, can I get a motion and a second for business items 21 through 33?
Motion.
Second.
Questions, comments, discussion?
On number 26, we need to take for a senior.
Yes, we do.
Mary Ann, what was the question from Doc?
On number 26, under IDEA Basic, we have Ed Demmer Senior. That will need to be removed. Any other comments, questions, or discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. Continuing business. I don't even remember what's under continuing business at this moment. there's anything we remember, we'll do it next time. New business. I have one thing. Catherine was our vice president. We need to appoint somebody or elect somebody to fill her position for the rest of this year. So can we get any nominations?
Brian, don't you want to do that?
I nominate Jen.
There you go. You okay with that?
Is there a
Sure.
thumbs up over there? Because I'll second it. Where are we going?
Do we have a second?
I got a second.
Sure.
Any other nominations for vice president?
I didn't hear the name. Who?
Jen?
And Scott.
Okay, is this a roll call, or can we do a all in favor?
I think we do all in favor.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, or no, sorry? Abstentions? Congratulations, Jen.
No, thank you.
I could vote on that one. I did.
Anybody else have new business?
I have a couple things. Number one, there's been a lot of discussion about the elementary school kids and not participating in sports and activities coming up into the high school and numbers being low. So in looking in the future, like part of our plans to do sports fields and things like that, I've talked with multiple people about, do we need to try and put together a committee of, whether it's board members, parents, teachers that might be interested in adding some clubs maybe to our schools, after school things that we can get them involved with, not just sports, but other activities. Like we've had the chess club for a long time, Builders Club, Mrs. Weber's done for a long time, but that's about it. So if there's
Can I
any.
just jump in real quick? Mr. Carabini has actually presented to the administrative team, Ms. Chamo and I specifically the other day, a list of activities that he'd like to get up and running, which will probably be on the October agenda for approval. And it is not just sports. It's a whole, it's almost like exactly what you're saying, Mrs. Duckworth. We'll run it through, we'll run it through, yeah, we'll run it through curriculum. Yeah, we'll run it through curriculum. And then once that's said, and if there's more that you feel we need to do, absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome.
Wait, I got one thing on that. When Buddy Friend was athletic director, this is going back quite a few years, he used to publish a statistic of how many kids are involved in stuff.
Okay.
And our goal was 100% of our kids are involved in something, whether it was chess club, whether it was Builders Club, whether it was football, whatever it was. Maybe we should go back to that and see how many kids are actually involved in stuff.
You want me to call it stuff, or would you like me to call it activities?
You probably should call it activities. I'm saying stuff because I want it to cover the
Anything.
entire spectrum. You have kids that are, that want to be in the drama club. You have kids that want to do chess. You have kids that want to do computer things. Then you have the athletes. So I would like it to be all-encompassing. And again, I think our goal should be 100% of our students are involved in something.
I'm all in favor of having Mr. Bartow look into that.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And then my other thing is I just want to, actually it would be continuing business would be, we had talked about the chain of command that was brought up again tonight about trying to get something together for parents so that they kind of know the proper chain of command between, administrators and board and everything, because we've already seen it. They just don't know. So we need to educate them about that. And then lastly, I just want to thank everybody for all the back-to-school activities, the back-to-school nights, all the personnel that was here, the students that volunteered for the high school to show all the parents where the rooms are, when many of us had no idea where we were going. So that was great that there were so many students in our halls to help parents. And also the orientations for new students and students moving places, I think was great. I heard a lot of feedback from parents that felt more comfortable and students that felt more comfortable just having some knowledge. And lastly, the school looked great. We always talk about everything we need, and we just went over all that tonight. But the paint in here even was awesome. The paint other places, the new doors. We've done a lot, and our team has worked really hard all summer getting the school ready. And I personally, being now, a student here years ago, thought it looked great when I walked in the door.
Thank you. I'm sure they'll appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I just want to say that, know that with the first field hockey game, there were some issues, and Mr. Barrick did bring that up, and I just really do appreciate what the grounds crew is doing for all of the fields, not just field hockey. Soccer looked great the other day. I was over at their game. So I think it was just a bump in the road, and I just need them to understand that we do appreciate what they do.
I relayed your message after you and I spoke at the field hockey game.
Anybody else? I have one question. I don't know if it's going to be a quick question. I hope it is. I've heard, the rumors in town through the grapevine of issues we're having at Third Street Playground, not during, not necessarily during school, after hours, police involvement, that kind of thing. What is our responsibility to what goes on at Third Street?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a lot of responsibility because it's our grounds. There has been some issues there. One of the main issues that took place about 10 days ago-ish was there was a student that did pull a knife on another student. It was after school hours, so probably should say children rather than students because they technically were students. Just so happened that our cameras had been out because of one of the lightning strikes that hit the building and knocked some of the cameras out. They're now replaced. We have to work with the police department on that. We don't want to shut the grounds down because we know it is a place for the kids where they do. The vast majority of our students gather there and play productively and well. There are a couple students that don't do that, so we're trying to figure out the best way to do that, but the liability does fall on us.
That was just a liability financially, or is it, let's say this student pulled a knife, do we have to deal with that as a school issue, or is that dealt with outside of school?
Yeah, it's dealt with outside of school. It's not during school. It's not during school time, and technically it's not school grounds in the sense of it's not an open building.
Okay, so we don't have
So no, we're not
suspension or any of
suspending
that kind of
this,
stuff?
no.
Okay, we just deal with it with the police, that kind of thing?
Right.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Could be.
Anybody else have anything else? No? Okay, so public participation. Anybody have anything from the public? Brad, are you getting up as public? Is that microphone not on?
No, it's not.
Press the bottom of it. Press the bottom of it.
Perfect,
All right.
thank you.
So these may or may not be what you were looking at, but I did these last year. These are for last year's sports season. 43% of the student population participated in a fall sport. 33% of the student population last year did a winter, and 33% of the population did a spring sport. We had a 66% win percentage against Group 4 schools. We had a 43% win percentage against Group 3, 52% win percentage against Group 2 schools, 44% win percentage against Group 1 schools, and 36% win percentage against private schools. So those are just some stats from last year, but those other stats I'll try to crunch the numbers.
Yeah, have fun with that.
Should also add to that, Mr. Bartow did just submit to me last week the Booster Club reports.
Oh, yes.
So I will be
They were in the
forwarding those.
packet.
It was in the packet? Okay,
Yep.
I didn't know if it made it to the packet
Yep.
or not. Missing one, yeah. I wasn't sure if it made it to the packet.
Thank
or
you.
not,
I
but
appreciate
I
that.
do appreciate that he did that, and he's been on top of that every year, so.
Yes, that was one of my pet peeves a few years back.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other public participation? No? Okay, motion and a second to adjourn.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Go home.
I got to vote again.